Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicola Doppio. I work at Hub Innovazione Trentino, HIT, and we're going to stay together now for some 45 minutes to talk about design thinking and especially the design sprint in this particular session of the Startup Lab. Of course, you cannot meet each other face to face, but Startup Lab cannot stop, so we do it remotely. Let me share with you my slides here. Okay, now hopefully you're seeing my slides. As I was mentioning, my name is Nicola Doppio. I work at HIT, which stands for Hub Innovazione Trentino. We are a non-profit foundation located in Trento, and our goal is to make it possible for research centers in Trentino, such as Fondazione Bruno Kessler and Fondazione Edmund Mack, but also for University of Trento to engage with companies and achieve so-called technology transfer and knowledge transfer. But this afternoon, we are talking about how to make design thinking in practice, how to apply it in practice, and especially I'm going to share with you the design sprint method and how to apply it in practice. I know that recently you have gone through some very good materials from EAT Digital MOOC about design thinking. This webinar is meant to give you some hands-on advices on how to put that into practice. And by the way, at the end of this webinar, you will be asked to do something to work at the team level and to deliver an output that will be reviewed by the Startup Lab organizers along with me. So what is going on now? As I was mentioning, you will basically have to watch this video for some 45 minutes from now on. The video will mainly be about how to put design thinking in practice, meaning how to carry out a so-called design sprint, which is a method that wasn't developed by me or by us at HIT, but was developed by Google Ventures, which is the startup accelerator of Alphabet, basically Google. And after this video, you will be trained in how to apply the design sprint on a specific assignment that you will be delivered. And by 9 p.m. In this evening, after a short teamwork that you will have to carry out remotely, because you're not supposed, of course, to meet each other, you will be delivering a short output. But let's get started. My background is in basically user research. I have been engaging end users in the design and development of ICT products over the last 8 years, I would say. And what we have done was basically to engage with the panels of citizens and put them together with researchers and companies that were developing new ideas and new prototypes of ICT products and services, such as apps, softwares, whatever, and make it possible for these new product development teams to do tests and co-design solutions along with users. So a lot of tests, a lot of co-designs with end users and customers. We still do that, but on a smaller basis. We organize yearly an initiative which is called the UX Challenge, which stands for User Experience Challenge. It looks very much like a hackathon, but it's not about coding. It's not about writing code. It's about testing and improving the user experience of digital products which are presented by companies that we select at HIT. And the so-called solvers are teams of mostly students. So if you are interested in design thinking and in how to put design thinking in practice to solve user experience problem of ICT products, Stay tuned because you will learn more about the UX challenge. We are hosting it in October, and you can take part to it and engage in a 2-day event, putting your hands on in solving user experience problem of digital products with real companies in the loop. Coming to design thinking, you know that design thinking is basically learning how to think like a designers. And what designers do are bringing solutions to problems that are experienced by people, be they users or clients. And most of the time, these solutions come in form of products or services. But you, as students of the Startup Lab program, you will also have to go through problem solutions processes, because you will have to create probably a new business idea or at least a new product idea. So you will have to deliver some ideas of viable solutions to be possibly developed during the Startup Lab course. The problem is that normally these solutions are generated throughout a process which is an ideation process. It's a creative process, of course. It also pertains on validations. Most time you have to validate these ideas of solutions with your potential users or clients. But this comes very much like as a black box, meaning that it's really hard to understand what's inside and how you can, come up with valuable ideas to solve certain problems that you have at the beginning of the process. This evening, we're going to look into a specific method that you can apply to put design thinking into practice without getting lost into this black box. Probably you know already that design thinking is actually a very serious thing. It's not like naive thinking. It's not like about, writing funny things into Post-its. These logos that you can see here are logos from design agencies which adopted design thinking as the main methodology to deliver solutions, most of the time digital solutions such as apps, software, and so on. To very big clients in the market. And these are very big consultancy firms, and I'm sure most of you know about them already. Well, most of these big consultancy firms recently, they acquired many of the previously shown design firms. Meaning that design is an industry, it's a growing industry. There are companies willing to pay to have design services. And I want you to remember this, because what we are addressing this evening is very much important in the market. And companies are looking for people that not only are designers, but people that can think as designers and can work with designers because they know how designers work. So how to put this into practice, okay? So if you Google it, if you Google design thinking, you might expect to find a recipe how to put design thinking into practice. Okay, I just want to start acting as a designer. The problem is that you will not probably find a recipe just to apply it into practice, because there are so many so-called process models that have been delivered during the years by scholars, and it's really hard to to decide even where to start from. One of these process model, maybe the first one, is the so-called double diamond. I just want to show you this because this is one of the foundations of design thinking, and it's good to look into this theoretical model of how to apply design thinking, because it clearly shows you what are the phases through which the design thinking should go through. And these are 4 phases. The first 2 phases are called discover and define, meaning that you have a problem, but before start acting on the problem to find solution, solutions, what you do is to start discovering the profile of this problem. You do research, basically. You analyze why that is a problem, and then you define it more clearly. Okay, you sort of converge to a problem definition, which is only way to the end of the process. The second part of the double diamond design thinking process is made of two other phases: develop and deliver. Meaning that only once you have got to a clear problem definition, you start developing potential ideas of solutions, and then you deliver the final solution that you want to bring to your user or to your client. It can be an app, or it can be a new functionality of an app or of a service, or it could be a improved version of a certain functionality of a app already existing on the market. And the double diamond process tells you that you have to iterate. You have to iterate in this develop and delivering two phases. Okay, and okay, this is one of the most well-known approaches to design thinking, but it's kind of hard to understand how to put that into practice. Okay, you have these four phases, but you don't know how long it takes to go through the discover and define phases, and you don't really know how many times to iterate on developing and delivering solutions. So it's really hard to put into practice. It's not really actionable. However, what I like about this process model is that it clearly shows you two very important things about design thinking. The first is that in design thinking, you have to continuously keep on diverging, meaning that you have to create many ideas, many options, and then you have to converging after that, meaning that you have to decide which one solutions, for instance, you want to deliver. For instance, discover and develop are diverging phase, because you want to discover what your problem is, you do research, and then you want to develop many ideas of solutions, competing ideas of solutions. And then you also have to define what the problem is at a certain point, and you at the end of the process, you want to deliver one solution to be brought to the market. So that's probably the most theoretical approach to design thinking. Another process model, which is a bit more actionable, and this is like the foundation of the design sprint, which you're going to look into soon, is the process that was delivered by Stanford and afterwards adopted by IDEO, which is the most important probably a design firm in the world. This goes through 5 phases. The first phase is empathize, meaning that you have to understand what the problem is, also by interviewing users, for instance. Then you have to define the problem. You have to create a point of view to understand what the problem is and what are the needs of your clients or users. And then you start doing the ideation. They suggest to do the brainstorming. I don't much like it, I must confess. This idea of brainstorming without like rules or wild ideas encouraged, they write here. And then what you do is that you go and you develop a prototype, which is something tangible that allows you to test the viability of that solution. Like this process model more because it's like more direct. It looks like it's more actionable, and it really puts the stress into the fact that you have to converge to deliver a prototype which can be tested to validate your idea of solution. Okay, this is the foundation of the design sprint, but before looking into the actual phases of the design sprint and how to put it into practice, let's take a step back and clarify what are the underpinning principles of design thinking. Because whatever process model you will decide to adopt, if you make sure that you apply these 5 principles of design thinking, then you will be sure that you will be acting as a designer, which is the goal of this webinar and this Startup Lab session. So the first design thinking principle is that you do not want to jump to solutions. The other thing that I liked about the double diamond process model is that it clearly shows you that you have to allocate 50% of your effort in understanding what is the problem that you want to address, okay? So you don't jump to solutions. It's not that you just start ideating solutions of your problem. No, you allocate a lot of time and effort to understand the problem. Why is that a problem? You do research and you decide where you want to go and what you want to achieve by the end of the problem solution process. The second principle is this idea about continuously diverging and converging. This is something that you have to do continuously. Diverging, as I mentioned, means that you have to create many ideas of solutions, or maybe that you have to spend some time in researching about the profile of your problem. But afterwards, you definitely have to converge to something that can be decided upon. It can be an idea, or something that can be prototyped and brought to the users. So try to make sure that you and your team, once you are doing ideation processes, for instance, you clearly understand whether you are in a diverging mode or you are in a converging mode. Because if you're not on the same page, you might end up screwing up the process a bit, okay? But both phases are very much important. Diverging plus converging. The third principle is that design thinking is human-centered, meaning that you cannot do design thinking alone, but you have to do it with your own end users or customers. And this can be done in many ways. Definitely, you can involve users in order to understand better the problem that you want to solve by doing user research, for instance. Maybe you can involve users in the ideation process as well. So you can ask them, okay, what do you think could be a solution of this problem that you are experiencing? And definitely you have to involve users and or customers in testing the ideas of solutions that you are going to prototype and deliver to them. Because of course, users and customers are a goldmine of both ideas and feedback for your business development or product development process. So human-centered, that's the third design thinking principles. The fourth principle is build to think. Design thinking is not theoretical, it's not just about thinking. Design thinking is about delivering something, building stuff, okay? This is important for many reasons. First, if you want to test something, you have to build something. So you have to go practical. You have to, sketch something. And this evening, I will teach you how to sketch ideas. But also, you build something, you sketch something to share it with your teammates. Most of the time, you work within a team. So delivering something helps you in sharing your ideas. And last but not least, to build something, to prototype something, it helps you in thinking. It helps you in clarifying your own idea. So putting your ideas into something tangible is really something which is at the basis of design thinking. Do that. And last but not least, the fifth design thinking principle is that design thinking is cooperative. You don't do it alone. You do it at the team level. So managing design thinking is really much about managing the interactions with other teammates, okay? So these 5 principles are very important. You don't jump to solutions. You have to keep on diverging, but converging at the end of it. You have to involve users. You have to build to deliver in order to think, and you have to manage cooperative processes, okay? So whatever the approach and the sort of recipe of design thinking that you will decide to adopt, make sure that you are putting into practice these 5 principles, because that means that you will be acting, not only thinking, as a designer. Okay, now that we have focused at these 5 design thinking principles, let's look into the design sprint. So what is the design sprint? Well, first of all, it's a book, so you just can go Google it and buy it, or I think you can also find a free PDF on the internet. Probably the entire book is for free in a PDF version. It was developed by basically Google, because this is the method that Google Ventures, which is the startup accelerator of Alphabet, have been utilizing to help their own startups to keep on improving their own business ideas and products that they want to bring to the market. And they did that by utilizing the design thinking methodology. But since they had to, be very practical with startups, and also the timeframes were very, very short, they came up with a specific version of a process model of design thinking that allows you basically to put into practice the design thinking into a 1-week schedule. Okay, so this is the design sprint process model. And it tells you that if you want to apply the design thinking methodology to new product development process or to a new business development process, you have to address that into 5 phases. And most likely you need to allocate 1 entire day for each of these phases. The first phase is the mapping. We will go through the main of these phases now. The second phase, mapping, means that you map the problem, you understand what your problem is, and especially what you want to achieve by the end of the sprint, what goals you want to reach. The second phase is the sketching phase. The sketching phase is where you create solutions. I mean, you create ideas of solutions. It's the most creative phase, is where you literally sketch, and you are going to do it soon, later on this video. The third phase is about taking up decisions, so which idea you want to prototype, basically. And the last 2 phases are about prototyping and testing. We're not going to cover the prototyping and testing phase this evening because we don't have time, and that is really technical. We want to focus on the problem setting, and especially on the creative creation of solutions this evening. So we're going to focus on the first 3 phases of the design sprint. And again, the nice thing about the design sprint is that it's really clear what are the inputs and the outputs of each of these phases. If you get the book, each phase is broken down into sub-phases in order to tell you how much time to allocate on a certain task within each of these phases. And basically this really allows you to put into practice design thinking. So let's have a look at the first phase, which is called mapping the problem. Of course, design thinking is about solving problems. And again, you don't start from creating solutions, but you start from focusing on the problem that you want to tackle. So what are you going to do in this first phase? Definitely you want to state the problem. So what is that? And why is that a problem? For instance, this evening, the problem that we could have is that we couldn't host you at the contamination lab to have this workshop face-to-face, but we had to create a webinar. That is a problem. That is not enough. You want to deepen your understanding of the problem. You want to do a bit of research, to find what could be the causes of that problem. And you might decide to interview relevant people, such as clients, users, stakeholders, or experts. Okay, this is where you start involving users. You do some user research. But again, the most important thing about the design sprint here is that it tells you that once you are mapping the problem, you need to do something more. And this something more is that you need to clarify how the world should look like without your problem. You can understand this also as to start at the end. Okay, so it's not enough to clarify what the problem is, but you also want to clarify where you want to go and where what you want to achieve by the end of the sprint, and what impact you want to achieve by means of any solution. Okay, so you don't focus on the solution. You know that you put the solution into a big black box. There will be a phase to find the solution, but you want to understand how the world should look like without the problem. Going back to the example of the fact that this evening we cannot have this face-to-face seminar at the contamination lab due to the coronavirus, the world without a problem for me could be that you know, all startup lab students end up understanding the contents of the seminar, even though we couldn't meet face-to-face. And this is hopefully what we will achieve by the end of this webinar. Okay, so the world without your problem. It's something like connecting the problem with the impact that you want to achieve by means of your solution. And this allows you not to sort of lose your way during the problem solving process. Again, this is about basically stating your problem in terms of a challenge. I give you another example. Consider that you have opened an Airbnb in your own flat, and the problem that you have is that nobody comes, and therefore you create no revenues. Okay, you do some research, and you know, maybe by asking your friend of yours, you know, and you ended up understanding that your flat is way too dirty for other people to come. Okay, so the world without the problem, or starting at the end for you, would be to like have a number of guests per month close to similar houses in similar neighborhoods. Okay, so it's not enough to clarify what your problem is, but you also want to sort of envision a final scenario where your problem is gone. Okay, so let's go to the second phase. We're going to go through 3 phases of the design sprint. The second phase is to sketch solutions. So here is where you start ideating solutions for your problem. You don't take decision, you just do ideation. Let's see how it works in the design sprint. So an idea of solution in the design sprint, it comes with that format. That is a A4 sheet, just a paper sheet divided into 3 panels. That is a idea into the design sprint. That is a standard, you cannot change it. And afterwards, this evening, you will be required to deliver some of these ideas. That is the way that you build and that you share ideas into the design sprint. So what's inside? Ideas must be visual, so you have to sketch. So be ready to, you know, draw. If you are at home, you know, you need to have some A4 sheets of paper and some pens, of course. You have to, you can draw things, and you can also write things. Make sure that you choose right words, because you will also have to share those ideas with some teammates. And you have to give ideas a titles. Okay, so that is an idea, but let's give them a closer look into what an idea is. And by the way, this first ideation phase, you do it alone. Okay, so this is something that you do really independently. You develop ideas alone. This is where you diverge. You might end up developing even more than one idea. So what's inside a sketchy idea? What should you sketch into an idea? Well, you should, of course, sketch your solution. So it could be like a product with its own features. It could involve some technologies, and you should also try to sketch the way that this technology works and how possibly it, creates value for your own users or customers. You might also want to clarify what are the terms and conditions through which your product and service is made available. And if it is a service, you should clarify what are the touch points through which it's made available, such as, mobile apps or web apps, if there are some emailing involved or other people involved. I will make you an example. And the example is the following one. We go back to the problem that you had before about this fact that you have opened an Airbnb place in your own flat, but nobody comes because apparently your flat is very dirty, as this picture looks like. So what could a solution be? I have created an idea of solution. You can find it here on the right side, and I have called it home makeup. What is it about? It's about basically three things. Okay, it's like it's an idea of solution that goes through some three steps. So the first step would be like to do the cleanings. Okay, this is very obvious, and I might want to invite some friends for help. Helping me doing the cleanings, so that I get rid of the problem that my flat is too dirty. The second step would be that I invest some 50 euros to hire a professional photographer, and I take much nicer pictures of my home to be uploaded in my Airbnb profile. That will hopefully bring more people to my home. That's an idea again. And as part of my overall idea, these are not three ideas, by the way. This is only one idea. And I also want to improve the descriptions of my home in my Airbnb account, because I saw that other homes had a way better description. Okay, so this is the way that you create and share an idea within the design sprint. And make sure that everybody really utilize the same format, which is a standard. We didn't invent it. Google invented it. It works. So make sure that you just follow this. If you don't have any A4 sheet of paper, just create one slide divided into 3 panels. But I'm sure that you can, get an A4 paper and just divide it into 3 blocks, and that's it. That is going to work perfectly. Okay, let's have a look at the third phase, and after that I will share with you the assignment that you will have to work on as a team. The first phase of the design sprint is decide. So basically here is where you converge. Okay, as a team you might have come up with some 10 ideas. Maybe each of you would deliver 3 ideas or 2 ideas, so you end up having some 12 ideas at the team level. So how can you discuss those ideas, and how can you make it possible to end up picking the best idea? This is the way that you do it. You basically have to go through 4 sub phases of this decision phase. Okay, so the first one is called museum. What does it mean? It means that you take all your ideas, which comes in the very same format, and you stick them on the wall. You hang them on the wall like you were in the museum, and you allow all the other team members to look into all others' mates' ideas silently. Okay, really like if you were in a museum. You look into these very nice pieces of arts, and you look at them very puzzled, and you are silent, and there are nobody giving you presentations. Okay, so nobody will have to pitch any ideas. But all the team members will have the time to really observe and try to understand what those ideas are communicating. So make sure that when you are in the ideation phase individually, you end up delivering some ideas which are enough understandable by others, okay? So try to really make the best of your sketching skills. And also try to utilize appropriate wording when you write something beside the panels. What you can do in this museum sub-phase is that you can, and you have to, add post-its on those ideas, sketchy ideas with questions and concern about a certain idea, okay? You just add post-its. I will explain you how to do that remotely later on. The second sub-phase for getting to a decision of the solution is called the speed critique. So after all the team members will have analyzed all the ideas in the museum sub-phase, you start doing this so-called speed critique. So how does that work? In a normal setting, and we did it last year at the contamination lab, you would be gathering around a single sketch at a team level, and you start commenting and discussing the concerns and the questions which are written in the sticky notes. And only here the creator explains and sort of defends his or her own ideas, especially by adding some missing aspects or misunderstandings that that occurred. The important thing is that you need to allocate the very same time to carry out the speed critique over each idea, and you will probably have not much time. So we are talking about some 2 minutes on each ideas, maybe 3 minutes, okay? So you are free to decide how much time to allocate, but you have to be fair. You have to allocate the same time on all the ideas. So if you will have 20 minutes, which is most likely for the speed critique, and you will have 10 ideas to go through, then you will have to allocate 2 minutes per each idea, okay? Speed critique. And of course, you're not expected to come up with new solutions on the spot here. You just want to discuss the ideas, okay? So no new solutions. The next sub-phase, which is the third out of 4, is that you have to vote the solutions. How do you do this? You do it autonomously again. Each person in the team will use dot voting. You will have to use dots, and each team member will have 5 dots to be utilized. For instance, your team has, I don't know, again, 10 ideas altogether. You, as an individual, have available 5 dots to vote the one that you like, the ones that you like the most. So you might decide to use 2 dots on one ideas, then to use other 2 dots on another idea that you like, and use your final dot on a third idea that you somewhat like. Otherwise, if you are really in love with a certain idea, you can allocate 4 out of 5 dots on that specific idea, and then maybe allocate only 1 dot to a second idea that you would like to give a chance. You decide. You can also vote your 5 dots on one idea. It's up to you. Do you want to vote your own idea? I think you're free to do so, okay? Whatever. So the nice thing is that this dot voting will result in a sort of heat map with the most appealing ideas, okay? In a normal setting, all those ideas will be still hanged on the wall in a museum setting, and you will end up having this heat map. And that really helps you in understanding what the team members wants to be developed into a prototype and to be brought to the customers. This is something, again, there are two other things that you should do in this decision sub-phase. You will not be able to do that this evening, but normally, before starting the prototyping phase, what you do is to give a call to the client. Normally, you have a client where you are developing these solutions. It might be, you know, your boss, or it might be an external company if you are a design agency. Before entering the prototyping phase, just give them a call and make sure that the ideas that you are considering to prototype, you know, it's in line with their expectations of potential solutions, because otherwise it's too late. Okay, so you give a call to either to the boss or to your client. The very last phase is called, I mean, again, sub phase of the decision phase is called review and remix. This might not happen, depends, but it means that if you end up having like two rather similar ideas which got like most of the votes, you might end up, you know, sort of merging them. That's totally possible. The only requirements of the design sprint is that you end up having only one idea which is structured in the same format of this A4 sheet of paper divided into 3 panels, okay, with a title, with a name, which is very important. Otherwise, you end up confusing all the ideas, okay? So this is what you are required to deliver this evening in the hands-on assignment part. So let's get into that, okay? Let's get into the assignment again. In this case, we give you the problem, okay? So you will not have to go through the 3 phases that I have shown you, but only 2 of them, which are the ideation and the decision phase. And the problem that you will be required to not to solve, but to create ideas of solutions for is the following. Engagement in the contamination lab activities remains still low among certain types of University of Trento departments and students. But again, this is not enough to set a problem according to the design sprint. You also need to define it in terms of how the world should look like without the problem. So the problem being low participation to events from students others than economics, management, or information science and engineering. And the world without a problem is that you want to achieve some 30% of increase of engagement of students coming from either literature or law over the next year, 2021, contamination lab or startup lab application campaign. Okay, so that is the goal that you want to achieve by means of any solutions that you will be now asked to ideate. How do you do this? Again, you will have to go through these 2 phases. The problem we have given the problem to you already, and the 2 phases are the followings. Again, sketch a solution and then decide your solution. By the way, I didn't mention that, but I will be sharing these slides. So you hopefully you now have already these very slides with you. And for any questions, you can approach the staff from Contamination Lab, I guess Gloria, and she'll be available to give you whatever information you need about this process. And last but not least, if everything goes as planned, I will be available during the next hands-on assignment that you will be doing now to help you, you know, understanding if you got the process right. But going back to the assignment, what is the process that you will have to follow now? Again, these 2 phases. So feel free to go back to previous slides to refresh a bit your mind about what are the sub-phases of all these phases. But here you have an anticipation. Again, what you start is that first you create your own ideas of solutions. And again, this is something that you do individually. So most likely you will be like at home alone, or maybe with one mate. This is the phase that you have to do alone, and you create these sketchy ideas, at home. After that, and you have overall 15 minutes of time to understand which ideas you would like to develop, and then you pick the one that you like the most. And in this converging phase, you refine it into the final A4 format of sketchy idea that you will share with the other teammates. Okay, so you basically allocate 30 minutes alone, individually, to develop one idea. So you don't individually have to develop 3, only 1. If you have 2, fine, but please make sure that you end up with a good, nice idea to be shared with your teammates. Of course, the idea has to be about how you would solve the problem that I have described to you previously. So what do you do next? The blue text carries instructions about how to make this happen remotely. Of course, we are not meeting face-to-face, so you will have to share these ideas and to go through also the decision phase by means of, probably conf call. So what you do is to take a picture of this sketchy idea that you have done. You put it into a Google slide. So you don't use PowerPoint, but you use Google slide. You only want to have one slide with only your snapshot of your idea, and you name the idea. Okay, you have to have a name for your idea of solution, and you upload that one slide with only one picture into your Teams folder. Gloria will have sent you already the link to your own folder. Okay, so every component of the team will be uploading one solution idea into the Teams folder. At least one. If you want to develop 2, it's fine. 1 should be more than enough for our exercise. So how do you go through the decision process? This is something that you do at a team level. So it will take more. It will probably take some 60 minutes. I think you can make it in 45, but 60 minutes should be enough to carry out the whole process. What you're going to do is, again, you start with the museum. Again, this is actually something that you do alone. So since you cannot like stick anything on any wall, what you can do is to open up that folder of your team and look at other Google slides that were uploaded by other team members. And of course, you can leave the comments. You can leave these virtual post-its on others' sketchy ideas with questions, remarks, and things that you don't have understood about those ideas, because those post-its, those comments will drive the speed critique, okay? But the speed critique, of course, you have to do it with your own teammates. So we really recommend you not to meet face-to-face, or maybe to meet face-to-face, but stay like rather far from each other, because you don't want to get any nasty virus over these days. So it's good to have a nice conf call, whatever it means, you know, Hangouts or Skype, and you do the speed critique. And you should do it in 20 minutes. So make sure you allocate the time appropriately, and you also allocate the time appropriately not only into the overall process of these 2 big phases, but also within each of these sub-phases. The third sub-phase of the decision is the vote. So you will have to use this dot voting, and 10 minutes should be enough. You can use like icons on the slides. I mean, it's up to you how to get organized here. It's going to be a challenge, but we will all learn a lot here on how to deliver courses and actually workshops remotely, which is a rather nice challenge. And then you have the very last sub-phase about review and remix. Again, this might not happen if you just like one idea. If that got all the votes or the majority of the votes, that is probably the best idea and the one that your team wants to choose. Otherwise, you feel free to, in this phase, to like remix ideas a bit and to come up with your final idea. In this case, if you want to remix them, you might probably have to create a new slide with some virtual 3 new post-its. That is fine, but the output that we ask you to deliver as a team is only one final idea, and that has to come in the form of, again, a Google slide with only one slide. So it's not a slideshow, it's only one slide with the final idea. And you have to name it final idea and to put it into, again, your team folder. This way, we will be able, as a Startup Lab organizers teams, to look into, of course, the final idea, but also to look into the single ideas that were developed by each team members, and also to see what kind of suggestions and requests for understandings that you have developed during the speed critique, and that will allow us to understand to what degrees you could learn how to put the design sprint into practice. So this is basically the assignment. Most likely I will be available tomorrow. It will be tomorrow evening during the assignment phase. Feel free to go back to my slide to to make sure that you clearly understand how to go through all these phases of the assignment that you were given. Please do not forget that what are the 5 principles that are underpinning the design thinking. So if you want to act and think like a designer, you should be putting those principles into practice. I have shown you a couple of theoretical approaches and process models of the design thinking, which are the double diamond process, and also the process that was developed by Stanford and by IDEO. The design sprint is something that stems from that experience, but amongst all the process models is the one that you can really put into practice, and that is why this evening we're covering the design sprint. I hope this webinar was instructive to you. Of course, it's not intended to be any of a theoretical level, but just to really teach you how to put design thinking into practice. Now it's time to put into practice. If you have questions, please feel to approach me. Thank you very much, and talk soon.